In a quiet town, nestled among green hills and open skies, was a high school known for its academic rigor and long-held traditions. It was a place where students were encouraged to reach their fullest potential, to stand out, and to explore new horizons. Among these students was a girl named Lily, a bright, compassionate, and dedicated young woman who had recently joined the school. Lily was known for her eagerness to learn and her infectious enthusiasm. Wherever she went, a trail of warmth and positivity seemed to follow. Lily was in her junior year, and although she hadn't been at the school for long, she had already left an impression on her classmates. Her smile was genuine, her kindness sincere. She loved learning for the sake of learning, not just for the grades or the accolades. She carried a natural curiosity in her eyes, one that drove her to ask thoughtful questions and dig deeper into every subject. Teachers noticed her eagerness, and students admired her warmth. For Lily, school wasn't just a place to study, it was a space where she could grow, meet new people, and hopefully make a difference. One of her classes was led by Ms. Thompson, a longtime teacher at the school. Ms. Thompson had a reputation for being strict, even harsh at times. She held her students to high standards, and while she demanded respect, she seldom gave it in return. To most, she was a figure to be respected, but not necessarily liked. She approached teaching as a business, a duty that she would execute without fuss but also without much joy. Her sharp eyes scanned the room each day, keeping an orderly and formal classroom environment where laughter was rare and silence was the norm. However, Ms. Thompson's strictness went beyond her standards for order and discipline. She seemed to have a unique way of interacting with certain students, as if some deserved her approval more than others. Students who were quieter, who fit a particular mold, received her nods and rare words of encouragement, while others, like Lily, often found themselves overlooked. Ms. Thompson didn't recognize her biases, but they were there, simmering just below the surface, subtly influencing her treatment of students like Lily. Lily had noticed this pattern early on but did her best to brush it off. She didn't want to dwell on it or let it disturb her focus. She was here to learn, and Ms. Thompson's indifference wasn't going to hold her back. Despite her initial excitement, though, Lily's encounters with Ms. Thompson soon became uncomfortable, marked by small moments that left her feeling unwelcome. She'd raise her hand to answer a question, only for Ms. Thompson to look right past her, calling on another student instead. Or she'd submit a well-researched project, only to receive a curt comment, not quite there yet, without any constructive feedback. One particular day, Lily sat near the back of the classroom, notebook open, ready for another lesson. Her classmates chatted softly, the sounds of laughter and whispers filling the air, until a familiar silence fell over the room as Ms. Thompson entered. The students quickly straightened up, and the usual light-hearted atmosphere shifted to something more formal, almost stifling. Miss Thompson's footsteps echoed as she walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking against the floor in a steady rhythm. She set her books down with a soft thud, and the class waited in silence, every eye focused on her. The room was neat and organized, each desk aligned perfectly, with sunlight streaming through the windows in orderly lines. It was a classroom that reflected Ms. Thompson's personality, rigid, precise, with little room for spontaneity. She began the lesson, her voice clear and unwavering, guiding the students through complex math problems. As she worked through each problem, she occasionally glanced around, offering faint nods to a few favored students, while others, like Lily, sat quietly, hoping to be seen, to be acknowledged. As the lesson continued, Lily raised her hand, her face eager, a thoughtful question ready on her lips. She waited, arm in the air, but Ms. Thompson's gaze slid over her without pause, settling instead on another student who hadn't raised his hand. "Yes, Daniel," she called, ignoring Lily entirely. It wasn't the first time, but each incident left a small, lingering sting, a feeling of being invisible. Lily lowered her hand slowly, her smile fading as she tried to keep her focus, refusing to let the moment ruin her love for learning. Moments like these were small, almost inconsequential to anyone watching, but to Lily, they were clear signals. She began noticing patterns, how Ms. Thompson would often give her extra work, mark her down for minor mistakes, or offer her the least amount of praise, even when her work was well done. Lily tried to shrug it off, telling herself it was just part of the challenge, but deep down, the disappointment lingered. What Ms. Thompson didn't know, what no one in the room knew, was that Lily had a unique connection to the school. Her father was the principal, a well-respected figure who had worked tirelessly to create a welcoming, inclusive environment for all students. Lily had chosen not to reveal this, preferring to be known for her own merits rather than for her family connections. But her bond with her father ran deep, and he had instilled in her the values of fairness, respect, and resilience. He had taught her to stand strong, to believe in her worth, and to always treat others with kindness, regardless of how they treated her in return. This connection to the principal was something Lily kept close, something that gave her strength on days when she felt especially overlooked. She knew that if she told her father about Ms. Thompson's treatment, he would step in to protect her. But Lily wasn't looking for shortcuts or favors. She wanted to handle the situation with her own grace, to prove to herself that she could face these challenges head-on. However, these seemingly small slights began to pile up, creating an undercurrent of tension. Lily's friends noticed the way Ms. Thompson treated her, and some even mentioned it in passing. "Why is she always so hard on you?" one friend asked during lunch. "It's like she never gives you a break." Lily shrugged, trying to brush it off, but she felt the weight of their observations. Each instance felt like a reminder that no matter how hard she tried, she would always be seen differently by Ms. Thompson. But she kept her head high, determined not to let it affect her studies or her spirit. Have you ever felt judged or treated unfairly because of who you are? Have you experienced moments when your efforts went unrecognized or when someone's bias held you back? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like Lily's stories of resilience, strength, and hope in the face of adversity. The day started as usual for Lily, with the sun streaming through the windows of her small, cozy home as she packed her books for school. She always approached her classes with enthusiasm, even when faced with challenges. But as she sat in Ms. Thompson's classroom that morning, her usual excitement dimmed. Today, her essay was due a detailed analysis of historical events that she had spent weeks perfecting. Lily was proud of her work, knowing she had gone above and beyond to meet the assignment's requirements. Ms. Thompson stood at the front of the class, flipping through the pile of submitted papers with her usual detached demeanor. As she reached Lily's essay, she paused, her brow furrowing slightly. She said, her voice loud enough for the entire class to hear, "It seems you've misunderstood the assignment." Lily's heart sank. She had worked so hard on that essay. "Misunderstood?" she asked tentatively, her voice steady but tinged with confusion. Ms. Thompson held up the paper, her expression a mix of impatience and disdain. "This analysis is far too elaborate. I asked for a concise summary, not an attempt to showcase unnecessary complexity. Sometimes, keeping it simple is better. Perhaps you'll learn that with time." The words stung. The class fell silent, and Lily could feel the eyes of her classmates on her. She forced herself to maintain her composure, her back straight and her expression calm, even as her cheeks burned with humiliation. Inside, her thoughts churned. I followed the instructions. I know I did. Why does she always make me feel like I don't belong here? Despite the hurt, Lily managed a polite response. "I'll try to simplify it next time, Ms. Thompson." Ms. Thompson gave a curt nod, dismissing Lily's effort without another glance. The moment passed, but the sting lingered. Lily returned to her seat, gripping her pen tightly, trying to focus on the lesson as Ms. Thompson moved on, oblivious to the impact of her words. Later that day, Lily overheard a whispered conversation between two classmates during lunch. "Did you see the way Ms. Thompson went after Lily? She's always so harsh on her," one of them said. "Yeah," the other replied. "It's not fair. Lily's like one of the smartest in our class. She doesn't deserve that." Lily pretended not to hear, but their words lingered in her mind. It was comforting to know her peers recognized the unfairness, yet their sympathy only highlighted how powerless she felt. The weight of Ms. Thompson's criticism followed her through the day, but Lily resolved to let her work speak for itself. She refused to let negativity define her. In the weeks that followed, Ms. Thompson's scrutiny intensified. She began assigning Lily additional tasks, framing them as opportunities to improve but clearly expecting her to fail. One day, Ms. Thompson handed Lily an extra worksheet after class. "I noticed you struggled with the concepts today," she said, her tone implying judgment rather than concern. "Complete this by tomorrow and we'll see if it helps." Lily glanced at the worksheet and realized it contained advanced problems far beyond what the class had covered. She didn't argue. Instead, she nodded and took the paper home, determined to figure it out on her own. That night, she spent hours poring over her textbooks, researching online, and solving the problems one by one. By morning, she had completed the task, even if it meant little sleep. When Lily submitted the worksheet the next day, Ms. Thompson barely glanced at it before muttering, "You could have done better." Lily clenched her jaw, swallowing her frustration. It was clear Ms. Thompson had no intention of recognizing her effort. Despite the challenges, Lily's resilience remained intact. She confided in a few close friends who expressed their support. "You're handling this better than I ever could," one of them said. "I'd have told my parents by now." Lily considered the suggestion. Her father, the school's principal, would undoubtedly intervene if he knew what was happening. But she hesitated. She didn't want special treatment or to rely on her family connection to solve her problems. She wanted to prove that she could rise above, even when faced with unfair odds. Meanwhile, another teacher had begun to notice Lily's dedication. Mr. Lewis, the school's history teacher, often saw Lily studying in the library during lunch breaks or asking thoughtful questions in his class. One afternoon, as Lily was reviewing notes, he approached her with a kind smile. "Lily," he said, "I've noticed how hard you've been working lately. You have a great mind and an incredible work ethic. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." His words brought a wave of relief and gratitude. Though Mr. Lewis didn't mention Ms. Thompson directly, Lily sensed he understood her struggle. His encouragement felt like a lifeline, a reminder that her efforts were seen and valued. Still, Mr. Lewis remained distant, never stepping into the conflict directly. It added an air of mystery, leaving Lily to wonder if he would eventually intervene or if he believed in letting her fight her own battles. Either way, his quiet support gave her strength. As the days turned into weeks, Lily continued to grapple with her internal conflict. Should she speak up about Ms. Thompson's treatment? Should she tell her father and risk being perceived as someone who relied on privilege? Or should she keep trying to prove herself, even when the odds felt stacked against her? One evening, as Lily sat at her desk, staring at her homework, her mind wandered to the lessons her father had always taught her. He had faced his own challenges in life, rising to become a respected leader through hard work and integrity. "The world won't always be fair," he had once told her, "but your response to it is what defines you." Those words echoed in her mind, giving her the clarity she needed. Lily decided to persevere, to continue giving her best, not for Ms. Thompson's approval but for herself. She would hold on to her love of learning, her curiosity, and her values no matter what. The next day, Lily entered Ms. Thompson's classroom with her head held high. She greeted her teacher with a polite good morning and took her seat, ready to face whatever challenges came her way. Despite the obstacles, she knew she was stronger than the judgments placed upon her. If you were in Lily's position, would you confront the teacher or keep trying to prove yourself? Have you ever faced a situation where someone doubted your abilities unfairly? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and strength. The morning of the group presentation had a charged energy. Lily and her classmates were finalizing their notes, their whispered discussions filling the classroom. Presentations were always a mix of nerves and excitement, but for Lily, they were also an opportunity to shine. She had spent the last week diligently preparing her portion of the group project, determined to deliver her best. Her team relied on her, and she wasn't going to let them down. Ms. Thompson entered the room with her usual stern demeanor, her heels clicking against the tiled floor as she carried her clipboard. The room fell silent almost instantly, a collective tension filling the air. She surveyed the class before calling the first group to present. When it was Lily's group's turn, she stood confidently, her notes clutched in her hand. The group started strong, with each member presenting their part seamlessly. When it was Lily's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and began, her voice steady and clear. She spoke with conviction, detailing the intricacies of their research and tying it back to the project's objectives. Her classmates seemed engaged, nodding along as she explained. But as Lily glanced at Ms. Thompson, she noticed the teacher's familiar look of disapproval, her arms crossed tightly and a frown tugging at her lips. When Lily finished, Ms. Thompson wasted no time in tearing her down. "That was quite the attempt," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But your explanation was overly complex and lacked real insight. It's as if you don't quite understand the material yourself. You should focus on simpler ideas that match your capabilities." The words landed like a blow. The classroom fell silent, the weight of Ms. Thompson's critique hanging heavy in the air. Lily's cheeks flushed, her confidence wavering. She wanted to respond, to defend herself, but before she could, Ms. Thompson delivered the final blow. "Maybe next time?" "Lily," she said with a pointed smirk, "stick to the basics. Don't try to go beyond your place." The emphasis on the word place was subtle but unmistakable, laced with an undercurrent of prejudice that sent a chill through the room. A few students exchanged shocked glances while others stared at their desks, unwilling to meet Lily's eyes. Lily stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of hurt and anger swirling inside her. "Ms. Thompson," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't think that's fair. I worked hard on this." "Enough, Lily." Ms. Thompson interrupted sharply. "If you can't handle constructive criticism, perhaps you're not ready for this level of work. Why don't you take a moment outside and reflect?" The dismissal was final, a public rejection that left Lily humiliated. She nodded silently, fighting back tears as she gathered her notes and walked toward the door. The classroom was so quiet that her footsteps echoed as she left. As Lily reached the hallway, a voice called out, firm but calm, "Lily, wait." She turned to see Mr. Lewis standing there, his expression serious. He had been observing the presentations from the back of the room, a quiet presence that most had overlooked. He stepped forward, his gaze shifting from Lily to the classroom behind her. Mr. Lewis walked into the room, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Ms. Thompson," he began, his tone steady but unmistakably authoritative, "I believe there's something important you should know about Lily before this goes any further." Ms. Thompson raised an eyebrow, her arms still crossed. "And what might that be, Mr. Lewis?" Mr. Lewis paused, his gaze sweeping the room as if to emphasize the gravity of his words. "Lily is not just another student in this classroom. She is the daughter of Principal Harper." The revelation landed like a thunderclap. A collective gasp rippled through the classroom as students exchanged stunned glances. Ms. Thompson's eyes widened, her confident facade faltering for the first time. "The principal's daughter," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Mr. Lewis confirmed. "And more importantly, she is one of the most diligent, intelligent students I've had the pleasure of teaching. But it seems her efforts have gone unrecognized here." Ms. Thompson's face turned pale as the weight of her actions settled over her. Flashbacks of subtle moments she had dismissed now played in her mind, the times she had overlooked Lily's raised hand, the harsh feedback she had given, the extra tasks she had assigned under the guise of helping. She had never connected the dots, never realized that the girl she had been so critical of was the daughter of the school's leader and a respected figure in the community. As the room remained silent, Lily stood in the doorway, watching the scene unfold. Her sadness began to shift into something else, a quiet sense of pride. She had faced Ms. Thompson's prejudice with dignity, never resorting to shortcuts or relying on her family's position. And now the truth was out, not because she had demanded it, but because her character had spoken for itself. Ms. Thompson's voice trembled as she finally addressed Lily. I didn't realize," she began, her words faltering. "Lily, Mr. Lewis cut her off gently but firmly. "Whether you realized it or not, Ms. Thompson, your actions have had consequences. It's time to reflect on how you've treated not just Lily but all of your students." Ms. Thompson nodded, her shoulders sagging under the weight of her guilt. She looked at Lily, her expression a mix of regret and shame. "Lily, I'm sorry. I should have been more fair, more thoughtful. You didn't deserve this." Lily met her gaze, her own expression calm but resolute. "Thank you for apologizing, Ms. Thompson," she said softly. "But it's not just about me. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect." The classroom was silent, the students absorbing the gravity of the moment. Some looked at Lily with newfound admiration, while others seemed to reflect on their own experiences in the class. It was a turning point, not just for Ms. Thompson, but for everyone present. As the tension in the room began to ease, Mr. Lewis turned to Lily with a small smile. "You've shown remarkable strength, Lily. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Lily nodded, a sense of calm washing over her. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not just by her peers, but by the very teacher who had tried to diminish her. It was a moment of triumph, not born out of confrontation, but out of truth and resilience. The rest of the class passed in a quiet hum, the air still heavy with the weight of what had transpired. But for Lily, the storm had passed. She returned to her seat, her head held high, knowing that she had faced adversity with grace. In the days following the revelation, the classroom dynamic shifted significantly. Ms. Thompson, once a commanding and authoritarian presence, now carried herself with a subdued humility. Her sharp, judgmental tone was replaced by a quiet introspection. She still taught her lessons with precision, but the edge in her demeanor had softened. The smugness that had once defined her interactions with students was gone, replaced by a genuine effort to be more thoughtful and inclusive. For Lily, the change was palpable. Though Ms. Thompson still maintained a professional distance, she began acknowledging Lily's contributions in class. When Lily raised her hand, Ms. Thompson called on her with a tone that carried respect rather than dismissal. It was a small shift, but one that carried immense meaning. Lily could see the weight of guilt in Ms. Thompson's eyes, a silent admission of the wrong she had committed. Word of the incident had spread quickly through the school. Many students who had previously been indifferent to Lily now approached her with words of support and admiration. "You handled that with so much grace," one classmate told her. "I'm not sure I could have done the same." Others, who had once stayed silent in the face of Ms. Thompson's unfair treatment, began to voice their recognition of Lily's resilience. "It wasn't right how she treated you," another said during lunch. "I'm glad things are changing now." Despite the newfound respect and attention, Lily remained humble. She hadn't sought this outcome for validation or recognition, she simply wanted to be treated fairly. Yet the support she received from her peers gave her a sense of belonging she hadn't felt before. Meanwhile, Mr. Lewis and Principal Harper took immediate action to ensure the lessons from this incident wouldn't be forgotten. Together, they introduced a program focused on diversity awareness and inclusivity training for both staff and students. The program included workshops and open discussions about unconscious bias, respect, and the importance of creating an equitable environment for everyone. During one of these workshops, Ms. Thompson sat in the front row, her expression one of deep reflection. The discussions forced her to confront her own prejudices, biases she had never acknowledged before. She thought back to all the moments she had overlooked or dismissed Lily's efforts, realizing how her actions had contributed to a hostile environment. It was a painful realization, but one she knew was necessary for her growth as an educator and as a person. For Lily, the workshops were a chance to see the change she had inspired. As she participated in discussions and shared her experiences, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She saw how her journey had sparked conversations that could lead to lasting change, not just for her but for all students who might face similar struggles. At home, Lily found solace in her family's unwavering support. Her father, Principal Harper, sat with her one evening, his expression a mix of pride and understanding. "You handled this with more grace than I could have imagined," he told her. "You stood up for yourself without compromising your values. That's something to be proud of." Lily smiled, her heart full. "I just wanted to prove that I could handle it on my own," she said. "I didn't want to rely on you to fix it." "And you did," her father replied. "But remember, you're never alone. We're always here for you, no matter what." These words gave Lily a sense of strength she carried with her as she returned to school each day. She knew that her worth wasn't defined by others' opinions, but by her character, her resilience, and the values her family had instilled in her. Miss Thompson, too, underwent a period of reflection. She began to see Lily not as a student to critique, but as a person who had shown remarkable strength and integrity. During a quiet moment after class one day, Ms. Thompson approached Lily. "Lily," she began, her voice softer than usual, "I want to thank you. You've taught me something I needed to learn. I realize now how unfair I've been, not just to you but to others as well. I hope you can forgive me." Lily looked at her teacher, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Thank you, Miss Thompson," she said. "I appreciate your apology, and I hope this helps all of us do better." The interaction marked a turning point for both of them. For Ms. Thompson, it was a step toward redemption. For Lily, it was a reminder that even the hardest struggles could lead to positive change. As the weeks passed, the school environment continued to improve. The inclusivity training fostered a sense of unity among students and staff, creating an atmosphere where everyone felt valued. Lily's classmates began to view her not just as a peer but as a role model, someone who had faced adversity with courage and grace. One afternoon, as Lily walked through the halls, she overheard a group of younger students discussing the workshops. "It's cool how they're making sure everyone is treated equally now," one of them said. "I heard it started because of Lily. She's awesome." The words brought a smile to Lily's face. She hadn't set out to be a role model, but knowing that her actions had inspired others filled her with a quiet pride. She realized that her journey wasn't just about standing up for herself, it was about paving the way for others to feel seen and respected. At home that evening, Lily sat at her desk, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the moments of doubt and frustration, and the strength she had found in herself to rise above it all. She realized that her worth had never been tied to Ms. Thompson's approval or anyone else's opinions. Her value came from within, from her dedication, her kindness, and her determination to stay true to herself. As she looked out the window at the setting sun, Lily felt a sense of peace. She knew that her story wasn't just her own, it was part of a larger journey toward creating a world where everyone could feel valued and respected. And in that moment, she felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that her resilience and integrity would always guide her. A few weeks later, the atmosphere at the school had shifted noticeably. The once rigid and cold environment in Ms. Thompson's classroom now felt more inclusive, more understanding. The incident with Lily had triggered a wave of self-reflection among both the staff and students. Ms. Thompson, having attended the diversity workshops and engaged in conversations with her colleagues, had begun to change. While she still maintained her high expectations, she now tempered them with empathy, fairness, and an openness to seeing her students as individuals rather than just their performances. For Lily, the changes in the school's culture were tangible. Her peers, inspired by her strength and integrity, treated her with newfound respect. Conversations in the hallways became warmer, her classmates more willing to collaborate and seek her advice. Even younger students looked up to her, seeing her as a role model for how to handle challenges with grace and resilience. The day Lily received news of her scholarship was one she would never forget. She was called to the principal's office during the last period of the day. Walking through the familiar corridors, she couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and curiosity. When she entered her father's office, he greeted her with a proud smile. "Lily," he said, holding a crisp letter in his hand, "I have something to share with you. You've been awarded a scholarship for your outstanding academic achievements and contributions to the school community." Lily's eyes widened as she took the letter from his hand. As she read, her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. All the late nights, the hard work, and the perseverance had paid off in a way she hadn't expected. She couldn't stop the tears that welled in her eyes as she looked up at her father. "Thank you, Dad," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for always believing in me." "It's not just me," he replied. "You've shown everyone what true strength and character look like. This is well deserved." Later that day, Ms. Thompson asked Lily to stay behind after class. As the room emptied, Ms. Thompson approached her, holding a small envelope in her hand. Her demeanor was humble, her eyes softer than Lily had ever seen them. "Lily," Ms. Thompson began, "I owe you an apology, a real one. I've spent the past weeks reflecting on my actions, and I realize now how unfairly I treated you. It wasn't just about you, it was about my own biases, and that's something I deeply regret. You deserved better from me, and I'm sorry." Lily listened, her expression thoughtful. She could see the sincerity in Ms. Thompson's words, the weight of her guilt evident in her voice. After a moment, Lily nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson," she said, her tone kind but firm. "I appreciate your apology, and I hope that in the future you'll see all your students for who they are, their potential, their individuality, and not let anything else cloud your judgment." Ms. Thompson looked down, her expression one of quiet humility. "I will," she promised. "You've taught me an important lesson, and I'm grateful for that." As Lily left the classroom, she felt a sense of closure. She didn't need validation from Ms. Thompson, but hearing those words reinforced the impact of her actions. She had stood up with dignity and, in doing so, had sparked a meaningful change. Inspired by Lily's story, the school officially adopted long-term diversity and inclusivity programs as part of its curriculum. Principal Harper and Mr. Lewis championed the initiatives, ensuring they weren't just one-time events but embedded into the school's culture. Workshops, peer mentoring programs, and student-led discussions became regular features, fostering a supportive environment where everyone felt valued. Lily took an active role in these initiatives, mentoring younger students who faced their own challenges and sharing her experiences to encourage others. Her status among her peers grew not because of her father's position, but because of her resilience and strength. She became known as someone who could be relied upon, someone who stood for fairness and integrity. Her classmates admired her, not just for what she had endured, but for how she had responded. "You're amazing," Lily, one of her friends, told her one day after class. "The way you handled everything, it's inspiring." Lily smiled, grateful for the support, but also aware that her journey was about more than just herself. "I just want to make things better," she replied. "For everyone." At home, Lily reflected on everything that had happened. Sitting in her room, surrounded by her books and notebooks, she thought about how far she had come. The hurt she had felt, the moments of doubt and frustration, had been real, but so was the growth that had followed. She realized that her worth had never been tied to Ms. Thompson's judgment or anyone else's opinions. It came from her values, her dedication, and the strength she had found within herself. That evening, Lily sat with her parents at the dinner table, recounting the day's events. Her father listened intently, his pride evident in his smile. "You've made a difference, Lily," he said. not just for yourself, but for this entire school. That's something no one can ever take away from you." Her mother nodded, reaching for Lily's hand. "You've shown everyone what it means to lead with grace. We're so proud of you." Lily felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of peace she hadn't experienced before. She realized that her journey had created a ripple effect, touching not just her own life but the lives of her peers, her teachers, and even her family. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, change was possible, and that strength often came from the most unexpected places. As she looked out the window at the stars, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew her journey wasn't over. There were still challenges to face, still ways to make a difference. But she also knew that she had the resilience and support to face whatever came next. What part of Lily's journey resonated with you the most? Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment that led to meaningful change? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of courage, resilience, and hope.